Welcome to Illuminating Hope, a podcast of Hope House. In this series, Advocating Justice, the Legal Battle, we dive into the legal battles that shape the fight for domestic violence survivors. In each episode, we bring you powerful conversations with the legal teams, court advocates, and change makers working tirelessly to bring justice, protection, and hope to survivors of domestic violence. From the courthouse to policy changes, from survivors' rights to legal strategies, we uncover the critical role the justice system plays in breaking cycles of abuse. Whether you are a survivor, advocate, or someone passionate about justice, this podcast series will empower and inform you. Justice isn't just about the law. It's about giving survivors a voice, protection, and a future. Domestic violence affects people of all genders, but the pronouns she for the victim and he for the offender are often used to highlight patterns where women are disproportionately affected by abuse. However, it's important to remember that men can also be victims of domestic violence. The use of these pronouns is a reflection of common language in addressing the issue, but it doesn't erase or ignore the experience of male victims who deserve recognition and support as well. Crissy Del Percio has been working with survivors of domestic violence for more than a decade. She is a graduate of the University of Missouri, Kansas City School of Law, and obtained her undergraduate degrees from the University of Kansas. Although she loves working with Hope House, she looks forward to the day when her services are no longer needed because Kansas City has overcome the issue of domestic violence. Crissy, welcome to the Illuminating Hope podcast. We're glad you're here.
Thanks so much. I'm glad to be here.
Explain what you do here at Hope House. What's your job?
Sure. So I'm a contract attorney, and what that means is I am an attorney who helps the clients of Hope House, although I'm not exactly an employee of Hope House. Given the relationship with everyone here, I feel like I am. So I just pretend that I am.
We're glad you're here. That is for sure and a part of us. Why is it important for victims to have lawyers that understand domestic violence?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think I could write a thesis on this. So one of the most important things that you can do as an attorney who's working with victims is be trauma informed and understand, number one, the cycle of domestic violence. Understand how it impacts victims and understand how abusers will use that to manipulate the system, attorneys. One of my favorite phrases is, this is not my first rodeo. A lot of times victims are like, my husband or my partner is so charming, like you're going to be so charmed by him. I'm just like, girl, I've never been charmed by any of these men. I understand why you have, but this is one of the things we've been trained for. We know what they're up to. We know their tactics. I've been doing this now for over 12 years, so you know what to look out for. And I always tell our clients, you should not feel bad. Everyone would have fallen for his charms. And the only reason I'm not doing that is because this is my job. And this is the X thousand person that I've dealt with that all exhibit these same traits. But a lot of times this is a victim's first time in court. They don't know what's going on. They need someone who does and who can guide them through the system and who's not blinded by the charm. And here's what's really important. Victims don't always act the way the court thinks they should. And they don't always act the way I think I would or how someone believes they should. And that's because trauma impacts everyone different. So I have clients that are angry. They're not angry at me, but they are angry at me because I'm the one who's there to take it out on. And that's okay. I have clients that cry. I have clients that don't have any sort of reaction at all. I have clients that apologize to me. And I say, you have nothing to apologize to me for. You have not done anything wrong. And I'm like, but the court especially, and attorneys who don't have that trauma-informed mentality and who don't work with victims, they expect your client to act a certain way. So if they see them outside screaming at you, it's not hurting my feelings, scream at me. Get it out. Get it out here before we go in front of that judge. It doesn't mean they're not a good client. It doesn't mean I don't have client control. If I have a client that's crying, if I have a client that's shaking, I've had clients pass out. I've had a client throw up on me one time. It's okay. That's okay. They're going to react the way they need to react. And it's my job to stand up for them and to make sure no matter how they are reacting, their truth and their story is told in a way that can be understood by the court and proves that they're not, and and I'm using quotes when I say this, crazy, because that's the way abusers always want to portray the victims. They're crazy. That's why they act this way, because they're crazy. No, this is trauma, and it's not their fault, and they didn't know that's how they would react. And so it's important for me and everyone else who does this job to have the training and the know-how to make sure that no matter how that client is acting, I'm the professional, and I'm here to make sure their story gets told.
Because truly, there is not the perfect victim.
Never.
I think is what you're saying in a nutshell, for sure. Have you seen the offenders use the courtroom as a stage, so to speak?
Have I? Yes.
Tell me about it.
I have. On so many occasions, we will have abusers get in there and they will tell their tale of heartbreak, of woe, of redemption. And it is so disingenuous that I do not have what one would call a poker face. And I know there are times when I have rolled my eyes, when I've had to just pretend that I'm reading something very interesting, like on the table, because I just want to ask, are we auditioning for an Oscar? Because this is great, but it's very disingenuous. They also love to use that time to talk about anything and everything they can. Everything the victim has ever done wrong. Every way the system has wronged them. Every way I, as an attorney, have offended them. How dare I not believe them? How dare I not listen to them? And I will say, sometimes I will give the offenders a moment. I'll talk to them. And I talk to them like a normal person. I'm also not one to give too much, because abusers, you give them an inch, they'll take 10,000 miles. So I'll talk to you for a minute, and then when you get ridiculous, I'm done talking to you. I've had them tell tales. I have told clients, if I had $1 for every time we had an abuser go into court and lie, I would be Scrooge McDuck with my pool of coins. I wouldn't have to do this job anymore, because I could just pay other people to do it with all of my dollars. So it's really important for them to know everybody gets in there and lies.
And what's the impact on your client when that's happening?
Oh, it's so disheartening for them, because they know what they've lived. They know their truth. And to have someone get up there and have a stage and a platform to just lie and say all of these terrible things about them, I would say most, if not all, of victims, they want to interrupt and they want to say, no, that's not what happened. And they have to just sit there and listen to it. And when we put ourselves in their shoes, if I had to sit in a courtroom and have someone just say terrible things about me and not be able to interrupt, it would drive me crazy too. I get so proud of victims when they can just sit there and make it through, because I'm like, if I was in your shoes, I probably would have already said something or gotten myself in trouble, because it's hard. It's hard
Absolutely.
for any human being to have someone else sit there and say terrible things and then also lie, because so often they're just lying. And when you get down to it and you listen to what they're saying, you're like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, nothing they're saying from someone who was not there. I don't know. The truth lies in between these two poles, but I know what you're saying doesn't make any sense. So
interesting. The court system isn't really based on emotion from survivors, but there's a lot of emotion that comes from the abusers, and like what you just described is kind of their platform of play that they're putting on, but justice doesn't seem to be the same for both sides.
absolutely. It seems like when we are in court, not all courts, and I am absolutely just speaking in very broad terms here, the abusers are allowed to have their redemption arc. They're allowed to profess all the good they've done. But the victims, again, at the risk of sounding crazy, aren't given the opportunity to express what they have had to go through. And whether that comes from sort of an old school mentality with the court, we have several judges now that are very trauma informed. One of the things I think that gets limited there is because the judges are so trauma informed, they understand the victim. They know what's being said is true. They know what is being said is untrue. And sometimes the victim doesn't get that opportunity to express everything they want to because the judge already believes them. And that's hard to explain to a victim. Like, no, you've already won. We don't have to keep going because everything you've said is enough. Take, for example, an order of protection. You need one incident of violence in order to get an order of protection. There's never just one. I think in my whole career, I could count on less than two hands how many times there was one incident of violence that caused. But you only need one. We talk about the most recent one or the worst one, and that's it. And then the victim is like, but what about everything else? You don't have to talk about everything else because you're going to get this. And that's not fair to them because there is so much more that needs to be spoken about. Whereas when it comes to the abuser or the respondent, they get all this opportunity not only to say this didn't happen, but all this other stuff didn't happen. It's our job as lawyers and advocates to say, I know this is not fair, but you've already won. And I know you have a lot more to say, but that judge knows and he's just getting his moment in the sun. It's unfortunate. And I wish that it was different.
But that also would open them up to hearing more lies if you share all of that, then that gives that respondent a chance to come back and address all of that too.
Absolutely. And I tell victims, especially when there's another attorney involved, I always say, I'm not being rude to you and I believe you, but we got to keep what you're going to say short, because anything you say that's off script, then they get to question you about it. And you don't want them to ask you about a sexual assault that we're not talking about, because nobody wants to talk about that. We don't want them to talk about you had drug addiction 10 years ago. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about this incident now. You have a lot to say. I appreciate that. I believe you. I want you to have that time, but this is not it. Let's just stick to what we know so that they don't get to just open you up to all of this terribleness.
In the court system, with you being there often, are there any holes that would need to be filled as far as domestic violence education, judges, GALs?
Yes. Oh my gosh. The answer is just yes. I always say this anytime anyone in the judiciary asks me this. I think that training of all kinds is really important. Not just domestic violence, but even when we talk about socioeconomics, which ties into domestic violence. I think that judges should have training on domestic violence, on how the other half lives. You know, it's really easy to get sort of disconnected, but look at how people that don't have money live, or look at how people that don't have education live. You know, when you're a member of the judiciary, everyone you know is educated. Some have more money than others, but every single person on that bench is educated. And I think that a lot of times the perspective is lost when it comes to people that don't have the same access to education and what that means. You don't have access to education. You don't have access to the same job opportunities. You don't have access to the same resources. So what does this all have to do with domestic violence? Then you're more likely to be in those situations, and you're less likely to know about the resources that help you get out of those situations. So I think that it's so important that everyone, at least once a year, goes to some sort of training on domestic violence based on what your knowledge is. Find a training that's appropriate. If you don't know anything about domestic violence, find a very basic one. Find a domestic violence 101 training and go to an In Her Shoes simulation. Hope House oftentimes has all kinds of programming. UMKC has programming. The courts have programming. Each year there's the Domestic Violence Alliance. If you're not familiar with domestic violence, go to one. Call Hope House. Call the Missouri Coalition and say, hey, I need some training, some very basic training. But I think that it's really important that judges, guardian ad litem, lawyers, even lawyers that don't do family law, it reaches into other things. Like maybe you're a criminal attorney. Maybe you have a victim who was charged, who shouldn't have been charged, and it's important to know. Maybe you have a victim that keeps getting traffic tickets because their plates are expired, or they don't have insurance, but they can't get that because they don't have access to the funds because it's economic abuse. Maybe you are an estates and trusts attorney. You should know when you're filling that out how domestic violence affects things, and maybe there's a reason that your client is acting so strange when you're asking questions about who do you want to leave your things to. So I think it's just really important that everybody have just sort of a fundamental knowledge of domestic violence. Now, does everyone need to be an expert in it? Absolutely not. But should everyone be cognizant of it and the effects of it? Yes.
Why is it important that victims have successful outcomes in ex partes or orders of protection?
I always say that an ex parte is like the first line of defense, or a full order of protection is your first line of defense. It's the band-aid that we put on until you can have surgery. It's so very important to be successful in that first step, because it is just absolutely disheartening for victims if they don't have representation, they don't say the right words, they don't hit those key points, then they don't have the order on a very physical basis. Then there's nothing keeping their abuser away from them. There's nothing preventing the abuser from talking to them or coming to where they are or continuing the harassment, very fundamentally. But also, sort of on a psychological scale, the court doesn't believe me. If you don't get your order of protection, if you didn't say the right words and you lost your order of protection, then the court doesn't believe me.
Interesting.
And it's really hard to say, I didn't get, using quotes, the easy thing to get. I didn't get my order of protection. But now this court expects me to move forward in a divorce or a paternity action after I have lost the one thing that I needed. So it's just really hard for clients, if they don't have that, or if they don't have the legal assistance to get that, to continue to have faith in the system and continue to try to trudge forward in something that can take months or years, which, as we all know, divorces are not quick. Paternity actions are not quick. They take a very long time, and you are going to be tied up in the system for a very long time. Getting that order of protection so that, number one, you have that feeling of safety and you understand, okay, the judicial system gets it. They understand I have this little part. Let's move forward. And speaking from a very legal perspective, winning an order of protection, getting an order of protection can then be used in further court hearings. It can be used as a tool in the paternity case or the divorce. Listen, this court has already made a determination that domestic violence has occurred. You, as the domestic court, cannot overturn that. A court of competent jurisdiction has already said there was domestic violence. So we are starting off with that as the building block.
That's amazing.
Yes.
I had no idea.
Yes. There's lots of different laws on that. So 455 is what controls orders of protection. 452 controls divorces. So if a court of competent jurisdiction, if one judge in Jackson County says there's domestic violence, I'm making a finding of domestic violence, another judge in Jackson County cannot just overturn that. Now, it's different if you're going from municipal to state court. But nope, we are starting with domestic violence has occurred.
Do you see a difference in the victim success rate when it comes to getting them involved in Hope House services? And if so, how?
Oh, yes. It's so important for victims to have services available to them and this like net of advocacy. If you are on your own, and this happens because I still work with clients that are not engaged in Hope House, either in a rural area or they're not quite ready to be as involved as they should. But when it comes to clients that are at Hope House and engaged in Hope House services, yes, you can get therapy. You have a place to stay. You have access to legal help. When you're leaving an abusive situation, you don't think about all those other things. You don't think about your mental health. You don't think about stability in housing. You don't think about the children. But when you have this advocacy safety net, it makes everything easier. When I talk to people who come in like for the legal clinics, which is where we just talk to people who aren't necessarily at Hope House or engaged in Hope House services, but have had some peripheral contact with Hope House, and they come in and they say, okay, what do I do about therapy? I need him to stop calling me. They don't even know what an order of protection is. I think I need to get divorced. And we're explaining to them all of these things. They're like, where do I go to get all of those? Well, that's why you need something like Hope House. This is one place where holistically we can try to help you get everything. We can help you with therapy. We can help you find jobs. We can get you legal help. You can be in shelter. And then when it's time to move on, you can have a safe place. You can have your kids. And all of those you don't think, or a victim wouldn't think, would help with them long term in the success of court, but it does, because as someone who does court for a living, it's stressful, and that's my job. Job is to be stressed out and go every day. And there are some days when I'm like, I'm gonna cry because I'm so stressed out because there's so much going on. So trying to imagine being a woman who's leaving a situation with kids, I'm not sure where I'm staying tonight. I'm not sure, is my job gonna fire me? I can't even imagine how stressed out they are when I know my job's not gonna fire me because this is my job and I'm doing it. But am I maybe gonna cry a little bit? Maybe.
Now that you brought your job up, what is your past experience and what is the why behind why you work in domestic violence and you're so passionate about being an attorney?
Okay, let's take this in two parts. If anybody is thinking about going to law school, just know everyone's mad at you all the time. Have you ever thought, do you want to be yelled at by strangers? Do you want to be yelled at by judges? Do you want to be yelled at by your own boss? No offense, Eileen. Do you want to be yelled at by...
I feel like I'm in an ad.
Right, by people you've never known? Go to law school. Just kidding. No, I'm just joking. I just like to make fun of law school because it's so important. So here's why I do this. I went to law school knowing that this was what I was going to do. And you can ask anyone who knew me as a little baby 1L, they will tell you. I always said, this is what I'm going to do. And I will tell you why. I went to undergrad to be a journalist. And I was like, I'm going to report to the world and I'm going to change the world. And this is my second advertisement. Have you ever wanted strangers to be nasty to you? Have you ever wanted to make no money? Do you ever want to get woken up at 3 a.m. to cover a car wreck? Be a journalist. Just kidding. Don't do that. It was terrible. I hated it. I knew very quickly I wasn't going to make it. I can tell you the exact moment I knew when I was not going to make it as a journalist. They sent me to cover a dog show. Okay, the happiest thing you could possibly cover. And I was talking to a lady and I was like, tell me about your dog. And she was like, who are you and why do you want to know about my dog? I'm like, I have on a media badge. This is a fluff story. Tell me about Sparky. And I was just like, that's it. I can't do this. This is terrible. I think at the time I was also making like $23,000 a year. And nope. But one of the things that I did learn from that is I would talk to people and they were like, there's just no one to help us with the legal system. And it was in a lot of different things. It was victims of domestic violence. It was people that just didn't have any money. And they're like, there's no one to help us. I was like, you know what? Maybe this was what I needed in order to push me to do something else. So then I went to law school and I was like, I'm going to help people that don't have any money, that are victims of domestic violence, and that need a good attorney. And that's all I'm ever going to do. And, when you go to law school, they're like, whatever you think you're going to do, you're not going to do. And I was like, nope, you can write this down. You guys can write this in Sharpie. I'm going to do this. So I did not know at the time there was organizations that did this. I thought this was just something that I was going to do. But there are, in fact, organizations like Hope House that employ people like me who just want to help victims of domestic violence and be good attorneys and do nothing else. There's just so many people in this life who need an advocate to stand up for them. And they need someone who wants to do this long term and who is not doing it as a feel-good thing and who is not doing this to just get their experience and go. A lot of attorneys think they can just do orders of protection because they're easy, or young attorneys do orders of protection because you can get trial experience and then move on to something else. But it's so important to have people in this space, lawyers in this space who want to do this. And I think especially if you look at the attorneys at Hope House, shout out to both Nancy and Ryan, you've got 3 that want to do this now. Nobody's going anywhere and no one really has ulterior motives. Like, this is what we want to do. We want to help people. We want to be good at it. And we want our clients to have success, to have happy lives.
So one of the things we work really hard on, I feel like at Hope House, is to empower our clients to be able to make decisions for themselves and to really chart their own path. That's been taken away from them in this situation. Can you talk about what that's like from your perspective as giving people the legal advice and then how they take that information and what they do with it?
Sure. Every time I meet with a client, I tell them, this is your life. That you are the ship's captain. At the end of the day, I'm going to go home and I'm going to deal with the consequences of my decisions for today. And what my role in your life is, I'm going to provide you with all of your options and you pick the one that's best for you. You might pick one that I wouldn't pick, but that doesn't matter to me because this is your life and you are the person that knows you best. I don't know you best. You know, some of these clients I've known very momentarily. There's others I've known for a long time. You know, there's some that have come and gone and come back. I'm more familiar with them, but I always tell them, my job as an attorney is to give you all of the options, good, bad, indifferent, and you pick what works best for you because this is your life. And again, I don't get paid more or less based on whether I win or lose. Nothing changes for me based off of what you do. So you have to do what's best for you. And you have to understand it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what your advocate thinks. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks except you. Because sometimes they say to me, I'm not in a place where I can do this. I'm not in a place where I can move forward with the divorce. I'm not in a place where I can get an order of protection. And that's okay. That's not my place to tell them, no, you have to do this. Like, this is fundamentally what is right. This is what you need to do. Nope. If that's what's going to keep you safe, I always say, you know where to find me. When you are ready, you know where you can find me. And I will be here. And I will not judge you. And I will not hold this against you because that's also not my place. This is your life and you get one life. So I tell them, you have this option and this option and this option. And sometimes I have clients, God bless them, they'll say, what would you do? It doesn't matter. The true fact of it is, it doesn't matter what I would do because I am not you and we are in very different situations. Or I have clients that are like, I want you to make the decision. No, you don't. Trust me. I don't want to make decisions for myself. So I should not be making decisions for anyone else. And you know, I tell them, I'm like, that there's a difference between me giving you legal advice and then you asking to make life decisions for you. And one of those is my job and one of them is way out of my lane.
What are you most proud of with your clients' outcomes? What's something you're really proud of?
Every client that contacts me at any point and tells me that they're happy, that is what I am proud of. I have one client and her case was terrible and it went on for years and years and years and years and years. And I was like, oh my God, we're never going to get a good outcome from her. And we did. And right after, she was so excited and I was like, thank you so much. Everything's great. And I was like, yes, of course. And then I didn't hear from her for a while. And then I got a wedding invitation in the mail. At first I thought, oh no, she went back to him. She did not. She reconnected with her high school sweetheart. I loved it. And so I called her when I got it and I was like, what is this? And she was like, I've wanted to call you. She was like, but I wanted to wait until you could see something tangible. And she was like, after you got me out of that situation, I reconnected with this man. We're getting married. I've never been happier. I cried and cried and cried. And she still to this day will send me like Christmas card updates. She's still with the new husband. The kids are great. And every Christmas when I get those, I cry. That's like my shining star, the one that will always keep me going. Anytime I'm done with a client and they're like, thank you, I couldn't have done this without you. Or my favorite is when clients call me a badass. And I'm like, yes, thank you. You too are a badass. You know, because it's one thing to be like, thank you so much for your help. I'm great. But when they're like, you're a badass and I couldn't have done this without you. I'm like, no, you could have, but we did it together. And that's what makes me so happy. And that is success to me.
There's such beauty walking beside a client, walking beside a survivor of domestic violence. I don't. I'm in the prevention field, but I can just imagine how wonderful that is.
It is. It's great. I like to say we're in the intervention field. We used to joke, you know, a lot of times people call legal domestic violence prevention. I'm like, I'm not preventing anything. Like, I'm not going around with a baseball bat knocking on doors like, hey, is everything okay here? I'm intervening in it. So I wish I could prevent it, but that is not my role in this system.
Can you talk a little bit about many of the cases with divorce, attorney, there's guardian ad litems who are assigned to a case. Can you talk a little bit about what a guardian ad litem is and what that looks like in the cases that you represent?
In divorce and paternity and child orders of protection, a guardian ad litem, oftentimes appointed with victims of domestic violence, and a guardian ad litem is an attorney for the children. So that person doesn't represent mom or dad, they represent the children in the case. And they are appointed when there is alleged child abuse. And that can come from physical abuse or emotional abuse, or the children have been witness to the domestic violence perpetrated on one of the parents. And the guardian ad litem's job is to investigate and sort of make a report back to the court. They're sort of the legal arm of the court going out and investigating these claims. They'll very frequently go to both parents' houses, they'll talk to the parents, they'll talk to the attorneys, and they kind of make a recommendation to the court. And they are truly integral in a lot of our divorce and paternity cases because they are a neutral party who goes to the court and says, mom's going to say what she's going to say, dad's going to say what he's going to say. This is what I have seen with my own eyes. I've talked to these children. Very often children do not get to come in and talk to the judge themselves for a lot of reasons, but mostly because it's really traumatic. Sometimes the judge will want them to come in and talk, but it's scary. Kids are scared of judges. Kids are frequently scared of police. You know, they don't understand what is happening, and the last thing we want to do is traumatize children and have them not go to judges or not go to police because they had a bad experience when they were young. So it's really important for these guardian ad litems to come in and say, I talked to these kids. These kids told me this and this and this, and this is what I think would be in their best interest. And that's the court hearing it from someone who has done their due diligence, who doesn't have sort of the sway that either parent does. My job is to zealously advocate for my client. No matter how ridiculous or non-ridiculous my client's position is, my job is to zealously advocate for that. The same with the other parent. Their attorney's job is to zealously advocate for however ridiculous their position is. And it's nice to have that guardian ad litem who's sort of that grounding force, who can either say both of these positions are ridiculous or absolutely mom, absolutely dad. It's nice to have someone there to say, this is what I know, this is what I think is in the best interest, and then the court can weigh all of that evidence to do what's in the best interest of the children. I'm a real proponent of guardian ad litems. It's a hard job. I don't envy them.
How does it complicate things if that guardian ad litem doesn't have a background in domestic violence or educated on domestic violence?
Oh, it makes it terrible. And I will say, especially the guardians that we are working with here in the metropolitan area, they're all pretty good. This job is hard for all of us, and I appreciate that each portion of Hope House does something that the others can't. Like, I love that our advocates are so good sometimes at talking people down off a ledge. We have therapists, and I've long said I would be a terrible therapist. You know, we each have our own place, and especially in this system. And I'm so glad and I'm so proud to work in a place where we can all work together and we can holistically help people and we can rely on each other.
It is great to work for an organization where people support people to do the same mission. And that's something I've always loved about this organization from the very get-go. So,
Me too.
Well, I sure appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And thanks for everything that you do.
Thank you.